Welcome back, sixth graders. Ms. Hall here, excited to have you here for our ARC lesson for today. Let's jump right into it. Today we're focusing our attention on informational text, and we're looking at standard RI 6.2, which focuses on central idea. So our I can statements for today is I can find the central idea of a text, and I can write a summary of my reading. So we're going to do a combination of not only identifying the central idea, but also writing it down in a structured format. For today's lesson, you're going to need a few things. You will need a hard copy or electronic version of today's article that's discussing space junk. Also, a pen or a pencil, a highlighter. You know me, I always have my highlighter because I'm kind of fancy. And of course, I highly recommend that you have some type of notebook where you keep all your ELA notes for easy access, and it just keeps you organized throughout the school year. Also, just keep in mind, if you don't have a hard copy or electronic version of today's article, that's fine. We are going to use big excerpts from it in today's lesson. But again, our learning goal for today is identifying the central idea of the text. And you kind of need to read the entire text in order to identify the central idea. So it would defeat the purpose if you didn't have that with you. Now, the title of today's article focuses on orbiting space junk. So I want you to look at the words orbiting garbage collector. What comes to mind? What is an orbiting garbage collector? Why would authors use these words to get our attention versus just saying space junk? So when I was looking at orbiting garbage collector, here's some images that came to mind. An astronaut in space. I even thought about, do they recycle up there? What's going on? What's really happening in this text? And this is a key skill for us to have because when you're reading a title, we want you to brainstorm some possibilities. What's happening in the text? What is the author trying to get us to understand or know as we read this text? So in a moment, I'm going to have you to pause the video so you can read the article for yourself. But before we go in there, as always, I always like for you all to be challenged with one question that you're going to use as your guiding thought as you're reading today's text. So here's what we're going to look at today. Read the following claim. Increasing amounts of debris in space are causing concern. That's the claim that the author presents to us. So I want you to find evidence from the article that supports the claim that is mentioned above and explain why the evidence supports that claim. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about claims today, but in the previous lessons, we spent a lot of time addressing claim as well as understanding arguments. So you may need to check your notes from the previous week to help you with today's challenge. So take a moment, pause the video, and read today's article for yourself. So hopefully you had some time to review today's article, but I want us to address our challenge for today first before we jump into today's lesson. So I wanted you to take a look at our claim, which says increasing amounts of debris in space are causing concern. I have an excerpt from today's text that we're going to read together, and we're going to find some evidence there that supports the author's claim that increasing amounts of debris in space are causing concerns. Let's read together. A piece of metal smaller than a sesame seed might not sound dangerous, yet even these tiny bits can pose a big risk. The International Space Station navigates around the paths of the most dangerous hunks of junk. But tiny flakes of paint have managed to chip the craft's quadruple thick windows. That's pretty thick. That's because space garbage moves fast. Because of the super high impact speed, more than 10 times the speed of a bullet, 250 miles up, even sub-millimeter debris could threaten astronauts when they conduct a spacewalk outside of the International Space Station, says J.D. Harrington. He's a NASA public affairs officer. Small debris can punch a hole in a satellite, Meanwhile, larger debris can crush one entirely, creating even more wreckage. So our author's claim is that increasing amounts of debris in space are causing concern. So I want us to find very dominant and very measurable evidence to support our author's claim. So do you see any evidence that supports our claim? So why would I highlight this as a very important piece of evidence? I included this because it's an exact quotation from an expert. And this is J.D. Harrington, and he's a NASA public affairs officer. So he's not just some random person that made an opinion to address this claim. He knows what he's talking about. Do we see any other evidence to support our claim? So here, I only highlighted one section. There's even more evidence that we could use. Again, our goal is to focus on verifiable information first and then go on to additional evidence or supporting evidence that supports the claim. And I have highlighted here, yet even these tiny bits can pose a big risk. I selected this sentence because it addresses the fact that even the smallest particle can cause a lot of wreckage in space and even here on Earth. Now, as mentioned, there's plenty of additional evidence that we could use, but our goal in 6th grade is to identify verifiable and very strong evidence to support the author's claim here. Now, keep in mind our learning goal is for us to be able to identify the central idea of today's text. So we're going to break our article into 3 sections with its own heading to go along with it. And our teacher tip today, keep in mind 6th graders and just great readers in general read every header to help assist in determining the central idea of the text. So here's the first section. The night sky is full of stars, but it's also full of garbage. Humans put lots of satellites up there. About 1,700 working spacecraft are in orbit around our planet today. And not every piece of machinery comes right back when its job is done. Many keep speeding through the sky long after scientists have lost touch. Those leftover space machines are liable to crash into one another and break into small pieces. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, estimates that there are about 23,000 pieces of space debris larger than 10 centimeters or 4 inches. They also estimate that there are about 500,000 pieces larger than 1 centimeter and about 100 million larger than 1 millimeter. That's a lot of space junk out there. And even the smallest piece can do some damage. So let's take a moment, if you need to, pause the video and summarize this section only. Now, as I read this section, there was a few things that stood out to me. Great readers, and particularly great 6th graders, as we're reading a section or a heading, I always try to take note of any numbers, dates, or anything that just stood out in this section. And we had quite a few numbers here. So that helped me to come up with the big picture or the central idea of this section only. Now keep in mind, we're looking for the central idea of the entire article, but in order to do that, we need to chunk it up a little bit so that it flows and makes sense as we come up with our final summary. Now here's my summary of this section only. Humans have accumulated a lot of space junk. There's plenty of evidence in this section that supports my summary here, including the number of pieces and its size. Let's take a look at our next section. This section is titled Space Garbage Moves Fast. A piece of metal smaller than a sesame seed might not sound dangerous, yet even these tiny bits can pose a big risk. The International Space Station navigates around the paths of the most dangerous hunks of junk. But tiny flakes of paint have managed to chip the craft's quadruple thick windows. That's because space garbage moves fast. Because of the super high impact speed, more than 10 times the speed of a bullet, 250 miles up, Even sub-millimeter debris can threaten astronauts when they conduct a spacewalk outside the International Space Station, says J.D. Harrington. He is a NASA public affairs officer. Small debris can punch a hole in a satellite. Meanwhile, larger debris can crush one entirely, creating even more wreckage. Now again, you may want to pause this video and summarize just this section for yourself. Use it and add it to your notebook. As I was reading this section alone, there was a few things that stood out to me that the author mentions. According to our second paragraph, I see a quote, so that tells me that this is important information, and it mentions that J.D. Harrington happens to be a NASA public affairs officer. So as I mentioned when we talked about claiming it, he sounds like he knows what he's doing, so that's definitely a piece of evidence that helps me come up with the big picture or the central idea of this section. What did you come up with as your central idea of this section? Here's mine. Space debris, regardless of its size, can cause a lot of damage. We have plenty of evidence here that supports that statement. The one that sticks out to me the most is from the last paragraph of the section where it says, small debris can punch a hole in a satellite. Perfect example, right? Now let's take a look at our third heading in section. It's titled, New Disposal Policy. NASA doesn't have plans to clean up what's there. However, the agency is working to keep the problem from worsening. They are ensuring that each new mission includes clear arrangements to dispose of spacecraft that no longer work and any pieces they eject. And there are potential solutions in the works from others. At the 2017 European Conference on Space Debris, presenters discussed ideas for disposing of space junk. Some scientists suggest pushing junk off into a higher orbit, while others vote for capturing it with nets and harpoons or magnets. In May, the International Space Station is expected to deploy a test project. It's called Remove Debris. It will capture several pieces of pretend garbage before burning itself up in Earth's atmosphere. Now take a moment, pause the video, and jot down your summary of this section. Here's what I captured. Various agencies are still looking for possible solutions for the removal of space debris. The key section that helped me come up with this summary was found in paragraph 2, where the author mentions the 2017 European Conference. Here, at the 2017 European Conference on Space Debris, presenters discussed ideas for disposing of space junk. Did you know they even had a conference on space debris? Pretty cool, huh? Let's keep moving. So to wrap this up, I mentioned that we have 4 sections, but we went over 3 sections together. The final section, titled, Oh No, the Sky is Falling, was only a couple of sentences, so you can still use it to practice for yourself. But here are the 4 sections in total. The title of today's article, which was Wanted, Orbiting Garbage Collector to Clean Up Space. Space Garbage Moves Fast. New Disposal Policy. And last but not least, Oh no, the sky is falling. Now keep in mind, as grade readers and 6th graders, we will use the information we found in each of these sections to help us determine the central idea of the entire text. So, what's the big picture here? What did the author want us to glean as we read this selection? Here's what I came up with. The increase in orbital traffic means there will be even more space junk and more problems for future space missions. Each of these sections address this and even come up with some potential ideas on what can we do in the future. How do we do so far? If you're not great at it, that's fine. This is a skill that we're going to use throughout the entire school year, and you'll be experts before you know it. So before we go, as always, I want us to be challenged with trying out a different book that we haven't read before, a different genre, or even, dare I say it, try informational text this time around. We're just now jumping into the space unit, so maybe you can find some text that talks about space, whether it's planets, galaxies, or just anything in general. If you're not sure what to read this time around, touch base with your teacher or media specialist or even a friend. They'll be glad to share some options with you as well. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you again next time. Take care.